Hello, I would like to welcome our audience to this breakout session. My name is Soledad Almaraz Kim. I serve as the Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Clark Construction, and I have the privilege of introducing Construction Inclusion Week. For context here, in 2020, a group of general contractors, Gilbane, DPR, Turner Construction, Mortenson, McCarthy, and Clark Construction Group created a consortium titled Time for Change with one purpose: identifying ways to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in the construction industry. Through this effort, Construction Inclusion Week was born. Our firms recognize that while we may be at different places in our diversity, equity, and inclusion journey, together we have the opportunity to encourage a united construction industry where diversity is celebrated and embraced, inclusion is fostered, and equity is apparent. Today, I'm joined by some amazing colleagues that have made this work possible. We'll go around and do some introductions. Kamisha, if you could get us started, I'd like to hear a little bit about your name, how you serve, and why your company came together to create Construction Inclusion Week.
Thank you so much, Soledad. I am Kamisha Mason, the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for McCarthy. It has been a privilege to work with everyone here that you see on this panel, and I can certainly tell you that that's one of the reasons why we opted into being a participant of Time for Change and helping launch Construction Inclusion Week. We just recognize that there's so much more that we could do together with all 6 of our firms towing in the same direction than what we could ever accomplish on our own. Everyone from our CEO to our employee owners are with us on this journey, and this opportunity to serve with everyone here has been a great thing for our industry, and I'm looking forward to all of the things that will come from this work that we've chosen to do together.
Thank you, Kamisha. We'll pass the baton to Joffrey.
Thank you. We joined this effort for 2 reasons. One, recognition that there's a lot of work to be done in the industry to be more inclusive, to attract more folks to the industry. But secondly, the opportunity to share best practices and learn from other firms about the diversity and inclusion space. So both of those reasons brought us to this effort.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joffrey. Stacy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Barkley. I'm the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Leader for DPR Construction. And very similar to what Kamisha and Joffrey shared, it really was an opportunity to collaborate with some amazing firms, understanding that we can accomplish far more collectively than we can individually to advance DEI within the industry and across its affiliates as well, that there's a broad and deep reach that all of our firms working collectively can have. And also really the importance of this particular topic as we think about safety and the irrevocable or innate connection, I should say, between physical safety and psychological safety, and understanding that distraction or lack of focus as it's related to inclusion and belonging can have irrevocable consequences on a job site. So really bridging kind of that gap and that understanding that psychological safety is as important and is interconnected with physical safety was extremely compelling and incredibly important.
Thank you, Stacy. We'll now have Lisa introduce herself.
Thank you, Soledad. I think basically I can echo the voices of my colleagues here. It is an honor to be working with them as we look to collaborate to build inclusion in our industry. This is probably going to be the most important work that any of us will do in our lifetime. You know, it's important that everyone who comes to work in a construction industry, a construction job site, can feel like this is a place where they can have a successful career and they can feel fulfilled no matter what they do. I think it's important that we work as a team so that no matter what job site you work on, whether it's a Gilbane, DPR, Mortenson, Clark, McCarthy, or Turner job site, when you go on each of these job sites, the culture is the same, and we know that diversity, inclusion, and equity is at the utmost standard. This is going to have a tremendous impact. The work we do now is really going to have a tremendous impact on the future of our industry.
Thank you for that, Lisa. And last but not least, we'll go to Kavon.
Thank you. Kavon McAdams, Inclusion Program Manager at Gilbane. So excited to be on this journey with all of my colleagues. Gilbane has danced in this space for quite some time, and we feel like inclusion, diversity, equity are just as important as safety. Hearing what Stacey has said and listening to Lisa, it's about changing our culture and making a difference. And so we're just so excited to be entering this space, not only as an organization, but as an industry as a whole. So we remain focused and committed to continuing this journey to further our focus, further our education of the industry and internally within our organization to show our commitment and change for our culture as a whole.
Thank you, Kavon. Now we'll move to the section where we have some questions prepared for this group, and we'll go in that order of introductions. Kamisha, the first question is for you. What's a good starting point for industry professionals who want to build a more inclusive workplace that enables everyone to thrive?
That's a great question, Soledad. And I think we can look at it a couple of different ways. We can look at the organizational perspective first, and then kind of look at what we can do as individuals. Right now, there are new programs that are emerging out of this need and this responsibility to create a more inclusive industry. And the best place to start is to absolutely start where you are. Understanding your current state is critical to the work that is ahead of you. So really taking that pause to assess your program if you currently have one. But if you're starting brand new from scratch, really start doing that baseline data collecting. You can either use a third-party consultant or you can do that work in-house. It really is about looking at your diversity representation numbers, understanding your climate assessments. Almost all of us do some form of employee engagement surveys. Many of those have questions that are related to diversity, equity, inclusion, or belonging, and really understanding what those data points are and how you would like to move the needle is a really good place to start. The second thing that you can really do is make sure that as you're analyzing that data and forward thinking to goals that you might set for your organization, is stepping back, taking a look at your overall business strategy and your overall goals, and really making sure that whatever goals you set from a DE&I perspective align with your core values, your mission, and your core purpose in business. You don't want to disconnect those things. DE&I should be an integrated part of the work that you do on an everyday basis. And the more you connect your goals and your opportunities to that, you're more likely to get the engagement of all of your employees, from your leadership all the way to your brand new intern that's stepping into the workplace for the first time. The next thing that you really want to do is make sure that you have an opportunity to look at your areas where you're doing great, and also some areas where you find that you might want to make some improvements. Again, align those goals with your business strategy and make sure that you're not trying to take on too much at one time. This is a journey. We can take our time to get there. I have a mentor that says, Kamisha, you don't have to boil the ocean today. So just take one step at a time, assess the goals that are ahead of you, and make those small changes that really do begin to impact your business, but also does not create fatigue on your business or change fatigue on your business. The third thing is really stepping back and analyzing what type of programs that you want to have in place. Make sure, again, that those programs really match the need of the people that you are trying to serve on a day-to-day basis through your DE&I programming, and make sure that it really supports your core goals in your business. And the last thing I'll say is really assess where you are as an individual. We all have a role to play in DE&I work. We all have a diversity story. And so really understanding where you are, where your learning is, where your level of awareness is, what you know about yourself and what may or may not be a bias or a trigger for you is really important to this work. In Stacy's introduction, she talked about psychological safety. One of the best ways to really begin to lay that foundation for psychological safety is really understanding your diversity story, how you can enhance your work, and how you can be a good partner or a good employee or a good coworker or a manager to those that you see on a day-to-day basis. At the end of the day, once you get past the policies and the procedures and the programs, good DE&I work is really about being a good steward of the work that you do and how you represent yourself, not only in the workplace, but also in the community. So really take that time for self-assessment.
Thank you, Kamisha. Really great actionable steps for us to begin this journey. Now I'm going to move on to talk to Joffrey with the second question. And assuming we do have this started, Joffrey, what actions are you taking to measure the effectiveness of your DEI programs?
I think the first thing I'd share is in the vein of what Kamisha just shared, assessments. There are different tools that are out there. One tool that is free that you can download is the Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmark. That is a tool that allows you to assess what you're doing versus what is considered best in class. So that is a self-assessment. But to the point Kamisha made, you can also hire firms to conduct a DEI audit or organization assessment to determine where you are in terms of processes, procedures, culture, and beyond. A second thing I'd share is it's important to have metrics in place so you can understand what progress you are or are not making. As it pertains to diversity, we tend to look at workforce composition driven by hiring and turnover of various different groups. As it pertains to equity, one of the things you can look at to measure your progress and effectiveness is whether people are paid and do they advance through the organization in similar ways that are not driven by one's ethnicity or one's gender. As it pertains to inclusion, surveys, pulse surveys, or other surveys across the company can be used, and you can ask questions related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The last thing I'd share is to understand effectiveness. It's really important to listen to your employees. So creating space to listen to employees through listening sessions is one of the things that we do. We also conduct surveys, focus groups, and employee interviews to get feedback on what's working and what's not working across our organization.
Thank you, Joffrey. Now, Stacy, this next question is for you. Given our industry, is there a different approach to DEI to be taken in the office versus the field?
Thank you, Soledad. And yes, there is. But I'm going to back up to go forward and just kind of piggyback on something that each of our panelists have said up to this point. And that is that the DEI journey is about all of us participating actively. It's not about taking a pie and cutting it up into smaller pieces. It really is about baking a bigger pie that all of us can eat. So I just really encourage everyone that I'm not diverse from you, I'm diverse like you, because we all have things that make up who we are as individuals, and we bring that to our respective organizations. So it really is important to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion through a collective, how we all can actively participate. And so with that in mind, DEI strategy needs to be holistic, taking into consideration the audience, communication mechanisms, accessibility, and the nuances of a particular work environment. The E in DEI is equity, which means in part to recognize, mitigate, if not eliminate, barriers that inhibit the ability to not just survive, but thrive. And that means understanding that we don't all need the same thing. Part of creating a culture of inclusion and belonging is defining what it means, setting expectations around behavior, holding people accountable, and having mechanisms for communication, which include feedback and seeking to understand. So just pulling the thread of communication a little bit longer, using communication as an example, ensuring that we are communicating in a way that actually meets the needs of our audience, whomever the end user or the recipients may be, and that we're hearing from all of our audiences what they want and what is needed for them. As an example, are we leveraging an all-hands safety meeting and toolbox talks, or are we using Zoom meetings with breakout sessions? So it really is important when you're building your DEI strategy that you do it holistically and that you do it through a lens that accommodates language, geography, as well as work functions and work environments.
I love the analogy, Stacy, about the pie. Thank you for that. Lisa, for you, I have a two-part question next. Can you define how allyship programs show up in construction, and how can we be an ally for underrepresented groups?
Thank you, Soledad. And to steal a phrase from Stacy, I think I need to back up. I may have introduced myself fully, so just in case, I'm just going to say my name is Lisa Movin, and I'm Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Turner Construction. So now that we have that out of the way, talking about construction. So we know that construction is predominantly a white male industry, and over the years has shown itself to be slow to change its systems, its processes, and even our mindsets. You know, you look back and the industry has been historically homogenous throughout the years. You know, when most people think of construction sites, there tends to be this generalized view or this, you know, good old boys club. And that's a stereotype that we're definitely looking to shift. And I can tell you it's definitely shifting, even just based on the conversation that we're having here, and it's changing for the better. When I think about allyship, I think about privilege, power, and what you do with it. So being a good ally means recognizing that you have the privilege as a member of the majority group. And just to be frank, as being a white male. In this professional context, it's about building trusting relationships with other underrepresented groups and using accountability, being accountable and being consistent. You know, using that privilege to aid in dismantling systems that have been in place and processes that have prevented our colleagues from having the equal opportunities in the workplace, and helping to build that sense of inclusion and belonging. I believe my colleagues already spoke about. Construction is typically a tough environment, and you're expected to have this tough layer in order to survive it, right? You have to really rough it out. You have so many personalities that come to this industry, and control can be challenging and can be daunting. But no matter what, our industry is changing. We have a different generation that's coming to the workplace, and their expectations and tolerance levels are so much different. You know, as an industry, if we want to keep pace with an evolving landscape, we have to change the way that we do things. You have, it's not quick to innovation, but I think just this conversation, and we know that there's a possibility and ability to change. You know, simply put, when you think about it, we're a family, and every member of our construction family deserves to be heard, to be treated with respect and equitably, and again, given fair access to opportunities as we look to build inclusion and equity. We talk about fostering a positive culture and changing our culture. To do so, our organizations, they must start with diversity and then take it to the next level by focusing on inclusion. They're both important tremendously, but allyship takes it a little different. And allyship it's very important in that it's about ensuring justice, equality, accessibility, and again, that sense of belonging. So to your second question, how can you be an ally? First thing I would say is understand your role and the power you have. People may think about ally and say, well, I'm not a leader and I can't be an ally. You don't necessarily have to be in a position of power to be an ally. As long as you're in a position to affect change, you have an opportunity to advocate on someone's behalf and use your voice, you can be an ally. Don't be afraid to have the conversations. This is not easy for anyone to have this conversation. It's a whole different language now from what we are accustomed to. Our white male leaders may feel discomfort, especially when you hear the word privilege, and a lot of people seem to avoid that conversation. Sometimes hear the term colorblind or gender blind as a means to wrap up that conversation. But being an ally doesn't mean that your personal experiences and challenges are invalidated. It's just asking you to use that advantage that you have as a leader and use that opportunity to introduce different voices and underrepresented persons and thoughts in the conversation. Kamisha mentioned before, education and learning. Don't rely on your people to teach you. Do your own research. There's so many resources that are available to you, historical documents that can take you back. I would say take the time to read and to listen and deepen your own understanding and perspective. And then you can ask the questions with community. You know, and also remember that, you know, everyone's experience is different. You can't just lump all Black, brown, or even women into one category and deal with the issues with a broad brush. My experience is different from your experience, from her experience. It's about the individual. I always go back to a question a leader asked me last year. He says, I have a seat at the table. What is it you want me to do, or how can I affect change in my position? And I thought that was a powerful question. And that's when I realized that, we're definitely on the path to change. The other thing I would suggest is bring diversity to the table, making sure that everyone, and to the room, making sure everyone's voice is heard. Ask questions of the people who are not speaking, bring them into the conversation, allow them to have an opinion so that they can see that they're a part of this conversation. And I think the most important thing I could say is speak up when you hear something or see something that isn't right. Don't just be an active bystander. You have to step out of that role and demonstrate the actions that you've learned, or the learnings that you have. Watch out for the off-colored jokes and the microaggressions against another group, and speak up about it openly and directly. That's the way you're going to impact change. People hear that, people see that, it makes a difference. I always think about, whenever I heard the word ally, I would always think about the different countries. You hear it on the news, this country is an ally to this country. So you think about similar countries who have similar ideals and a vow to support each other. This is where it takes me back to where we are right now, where as you look across the screen, I see companies who are typically considered our competitors, and we're all working together to position ourselves and to help, along with the rest of this industry, as lifelong advocates and ally, to help end discrimination and bias in our industry as we work to change the culture of the construction industry.
Wow, Lisa, thank you for such a great way to really define allyship and how they can be a part of this movement. Kevin, my last question here is for you. Given that this is right around the corner, what can industry professionals expect from Construction Inclusion Week if they choose to participate?
So great, thank you so much. We have 5 exciting daily themes that are going to be highlighted during Construction Inclusion Week. And those 5 themes are, and will coincide with each day of the week, leadership, commitment, and accountability, unconscious bias, supplier diversity, job site culture, and community outreach. There will be daily video messages from each of our respective CEOs with an introduction to each daily theme. And throughout the week, we're going to invite all of you to either begin, continue, or advance your conversations. And not just your conversations, but your education around diversity, inclusion, and equity to really demonstrate your commitment to improve possibilities. We are going to supply you with resources that are designed to really meet all of you where you are, because we realize that all of us are at different spaces or spots on this diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. There are discussions, toolbox talks, and table talks that can be facilitated by anyone within your organization, anyone on the project team, whether it's a superintendent, whether it's a foreman, whomever. And these discussions are intended to stimulate thought, introduce new perspectives, and really broaden your awareness. Subject matter experts are not going to be necessary to guide these discussions. We have also developed downloadable materials, which include toolkits with the toolbox talks that we spoke about in project sites. Have the toolbox talks, and then we have table talks that are designed for those that are stationed in an office environment setting. And we even have discussion guides for at-home resources and activities that can be done and completed at home to continue these discussions with your family members. Because we realize and recognize that your upbringing and all of these biases that you may have really contribute to your early learning and develop, and what those influences are that at home, they play an enormous impact on many of the unconscious biases that we carry today. So we encourage each company to visit our website, constructioninclusionweek.com. There is a pre-planning guide from the website that you can download. There's also a section on the site that is dedicated to resources that are downloadable. And also social media resources are there as well, logos and all of our collateral material. And we also have Spanish translations available of all of our material as well. Again, our intent is to provide you with enough material and resources that are going to extend beyond Inclusion Week to really heighten the engagement and build your awareness to continue this dialogue throughout the year. So if you haven't already taken advantage and checked out the site, please visit constructioninclusionweek.com and sign up to receive the resources and details that are available. And also, very important, cannot say this enough, we want you to share your plans for participating in your events. As events are occurring, we also want you to take photos and share, post these events on your social media pages using the hashtag Construction Inclusion Week, and tag us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, because we really want to see and have a good sense for the participation. And we want to know what you're doing, no matter how small or large the event is. We want to know about it. We want to hear from you. We're so excited for everyone to join in this event. And there's so much exciting information for you at your fingertips. Just go onto our site at constructioninclusionweek.com.
Thank you, Kavon. Well said. And thank you to all our panelists for your thoughtful answers, and our audience for tuning in today. We'll leave you with one thought and one call to action. Diversity, equity, and inclusion starts with leadership, but it's everyone's responsibility to take ownership of the work. And our call to action is really inviting you to be a part of this. Registered, as Kavon just invited you, constructioninclusionweek.com. Our dates again are October 18th to October 22nd. And now is the time to build the momentum for the next year and run together to build what we want to see for Construction Inclusion Week for the years to come. Thank you again.